So are we going to see Vladimir Putin in power until 2036?
Well, at the moment, we can rest assured that the constitutional amendments that would allow him to stay in the power till 2036 will be passed. The question is, at the moment, is whether or not the conditions within Russia will allow him to do that. He started this year with two big goals, one of which was passing this package of reforms, and the second was kickstarting the economy. It's important to note that since about 2009, following that financial crash then, you've had years of economic stagnation punctuated by occasional crises, such as 2014 and now. And what that has led to is a kind of broad erosion of living standards that's really starting to weigh on Putin's popularity and popular, if not support, popular acquiescence for his continued rule.
Daragh, good morning to you. It's Manus. You referred to 2011, the last time there was a severe challenge maybe to Putin, discontent. What level of discontent is there really in Russia at the moment?
Well, it's not just the level of discontent, it's the geographical spread and the nature of it. So the 2011 protests were largely confined to what might be called the Moscow creative or urban professional class. And Putin really counters that by appealing to what you might call the Russian silent majority. That's where you see the Kremlin start to refocus on themes like social conservatism, opposition to LGBT rights, this sort of thing, and leaning on support outside of Moscow and the provinces. Now, what we've seen again since 2011 is the kind of broad-based economic growth that we saw in Putin's first two terms that really cemented his popular appeal hasn't manifested itself. And we've seen living standards stagnate or even go backwards. And that's led to a willingness or a renewed willingness of Russians to protest and get out in the streets that we're seeing not just in Moscow and St. Petersburg, the capital regions, if you want, but across the country. Now, a lot of these protests tend to be about public health issues or kind of specific local concerns, but you're starting to see Russians are linking up their dissatisfactions with the shortcomings of the political system as a whole. So while you're not seeing any kind of broad turn against Putin on behalf of the people, you are starting to see an increasing level of skepticism. And certainly the response to the coronavirus pandemic or the lack of response is another thing that's kind of not confidence in the political system, which we started to see in some of the independent polling.
Daragh, if we do see Putin's term extend through to 2036, but this discontent that you talk about starts to ferment even more and grow during that time, what sort of political environment could we see, or will we actually see that discontent fall away?
Well, this all depends on how Russia emerges from the current crisis. Now, on their current projections from the Ministry of Economic Development, they're not expecting GDP to even recover until 2023. And that is dangerous for Putin, frankly, because, even if these amendments pass, which we expect they will, he will have to put himself forward for some sort of vote in 2024. And even if the circumstances of that election aren't free and fair, if you are seeing gathering or strengthening public opposition to Putin at that point, driven by a poor economy, it provides, a handy focal point for the opposition to rally around this election. And that's something we've seen throughout the post-Soviet space. Obviously, Ukraine provides the most dramatic examples, but equally we're seeing in Belarus right now where the political system is much more rigid and where Lukashenko's kind of hold on power is tighter, if you want. A combination of a very poor economic situation. Yeah,
we just want to get one last top line from you, especially around the US. Joe Biden, you reckon 64% likelihood he's going to win the 2020 election. That's a lumpy old prediction. What does that mean for Putin? If Biden was in the White House, what would it mean for Putin?
Well, that's our forecast at the moment, yes, and it does seem to follow on with the polls. You know, the big problem for Putin, or the big threat for Putin, is if there's an intensification of sanctions and a much less favorable external environment, which we would probably expect in the event of a Democratic victory, not only due to the 2016 election interference, but now we see these new allegations about activities in Afghanistan. And if you see a United States that's determined to hit Russia harder economically, that's something that, again, delays that internal recovery, that entrenches falling living standards, and, again, really drives discontent with the political leadership. So it's, you know, obviously it's difficult to predict the future with any full accuracy, but generally speaking, a Democratic White House would be one that would provide a much more challenging external environment for Russia.